Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I want to discuss something that has been thoroughly over-discussed on YouTube and in the forums and any social media platform where the knife community is present. I'm basically going to present the question: should you buy a inexpensive OTF, right? For those of you who are shopping for an OTF, should you buy an inexpensive OTF like the legendary Lightning OTF for around $40, or should you spend way more money on a premium, in this case, American-made Microtech Combat Troodon OTF, right? Are they the same thing? Really? Like, is it really just one is just a lot more expensive because it's pretty and crazy, right? Or is there more to it? I'm going to try and make this simple and fast. There are a lot of different perspectives out there, and I would suggest that you go and get as many different perspectives as possible. I actually have multiple videos on the Lightning OTF, multiple videos on Microtech knives such as this Combat Troodon, and I have lots and lots of videos on other OTFs. I've handled a ridiculous amount of knives. I have lots of usage experience with the Lightning. This is my brother's. I've actually owned two of them myself, and I've given many as gifts to people in my immediate family and friends, right? Lots of experience there. While this Combat Troodon has not seen a lot of use, I have definitely EDC'd multiple Microtech OTF knives, and actually other OTF knives such as the Guardian Tactical Recon that are also more expensive. I've got plenty of experience. On top of that, there are countless videos out there that will actually demonstrate a lot of what I'm going to talk about, the durability of the Lightning OTF and the durability of knives like the Microtech Combat Troodon. In any case, I will link all of this stuff down in the description so that you can pick up what's right for you. It's important to remember that the reality of this is that one of these is simply going to be better than the other one for some people, and it's going to be the opposite for other people. For new people coming in, no matter what you read in the comments section of my channel or other knife-related channels, right, you're going to see stuff all the time like, if it's a video highlighting a Microtech knife, you're going to see the most simple comments you've ever seen, repeated multiple times over. Microtech knives are overpriced, and my Lightning OTF knife does exactly the same thing for less money. Not a lot of context there. It's really just somebody saying something, and there's not much to go on. So I'm going to offer a lot more information and help you make the real right decision, considering, all of this information. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and other benefits, there's, of course, a link right down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. First thing that people are going to point out, people who know exactly what this is a Microtech Combat Troodon, and it is a Hellhound or Signature Series knife, which means it's actually substantially more expensive than the standard Combat Troodon, which comes in at about $485. This guy is about $600. This guy right here is about $40. That right there is going to be enough for a lot of people to leave this video and go, no, I'm not going to do it, right? There are a lot of amazing high-end OTF knives that actually come in substantially less expensive than this guy. I think a better comparison, this is just what I've got here right now, a better comparison actually would have been the Microtech Ultratech, the Microtech Troodon, or the Guardian Tactical Recon 35. I think, honestly, the Guardian Tactical Recon 35 has been compared multiple times. I may have actually done it. I've just done so many videos I can't remember. I've got two other videos on the Lightning OTF discussing whether or not it's worth it. And the truth is, this guy is still worth it here in 2020. 40 bucks, right? You're getting a dependable, fairly dependable OTF knife, right? Anybody looking at this and going, those are clearly weapons and that's the only reason I'd be interested in one, I feel bad for you. These are designed as tools. From the manufacturer, these are designed as tools. Convenient cutting tools, that's what we're going to be discussing here today. I could care less about the offensive or defensive benefits of these knives. My experience with them is entirely, as tools, as they should. I understand knives can be used in extreme circumstances, right? But so can a rolling pin, right? So can a shard of glass with some, leather wrapped around it or whatever. That's not what we're discussing here today. I want to talk about some factual information between knives like this and knives like this, right? And then, help you figure it out. So let's start off with the Lightning. What do we got going on here? We have some type of aluminum. A lot of people claim it's 6061 T6. I doubt that. I don't know what it's made out of. Whatever it is, it's okay. It's gonna hold up, right? The balance on it is okay. It's nothing really special. Most people who are looking at knives in this price range are not really going to be concerned with that. We do have, these are Torx heads up here, which is great. You can get into it pretty easily. We have what they attempted to create here was texturing. It's been the same forever. Whatever this is, the mold that they're using has a flaw in it. This flaw has been here forever. That's this big poop mark, right? I don't know what that is. It's on every single Lightning OTF, or almost every Lightning OTF in existence, right? The pocket clip functions. This thing will factually become loose over time, and you'll have to tighten that back down. I've heard of people losing their Lightning OTFs because the pocket clip comes off, because this is basically just, this is manufactured to the bare minimum standards, right? Still trying to make it something that's going to last longer than a lot of other knives in this price range. This is not the same thing as a gas station knife that you might find, you know, at your local gas station or a hardware store that's just meant to look really cool. No, this actually is a fairly dependable knife. It has a, it's got a functional, you know, dependable chassis. You know, in all honesty, this knife has been owned by my brother for 4 years now, and it has not failed other than one time where it was actually force failed. I mean, we can actually do that right now, right? These are, OTFs are pretty easy to fail. For anybody wondering, no, OTF knives don't just fire right through a hard surface like in the movie It. That's movie magic, and it doesn't make any sense. It's not reality. That's not what they do, right? These knives will essentially, you know, fire into a surface, and that's, you have to reset them, right? And they'll be fine. The only time that this thing failed, according to my brother, is when he handed it to somebody to use it, and the person apparently didn't realize you just pull the switch back down to retract it, didn't understand that that's how it retracts, and started pounding the knife into a hard surface, forcing it to fail, right? Most of the time you're not going to be doing stuff like that with this knife, right? Most of the time you're going to be cutting with it. So that may not be the best example of the faults in its durability, but something to point out that if you do that with a Microtech knife, it'll take substantially, I mean substantially more force to get that guy to fail. There's actually a video of X-Treme, I believe, X-Treme pounding a combat Troodon into a piece of wood, and I think he buries the blade, something like this, and then wrenches it back out, and it still goes strong. It's because the locking system on this guy is substantially more durable, more robust versus this guy. It's meant to lock out and be there while you do a normal cut with a knife, right? And that's fine. That's really all that you need it to do. Firing switch, no idea what it's made out of. Wiggles a little bit. That's not really that big of a deal. It does fire dependably. And it's got decent firing power. Obviously, it depends on how long you've been using your knife and how, you know, for what you've been using it for. It will slow down over time, and these things, factually, right? I mean, we're averaging this out. Obviously, you're going to find reports of both of these knives failing if you dig deep on the internet. But this guy, in my experience, and just reading with everybody else's experience, these guys fail substantially more often than Microtech knives. Factors will be, again, what you're using it for, whether or not you clean it or maintain it. There's obviously a certain level of debris, or a certain amount of debris you can get in either of these knives to get them to fail. This guy's got a more powerful spring. It is made a little bit better. It's not gonna fail nearly as often, right? And I mean nearly, nowhere near. This guy, I mean, there's gonna be people who tell you, I've been using mine for 10 years and it's never failed, right? Well, what they might not be saying is they're getting it out once every 15 days to open a letter. Yeah, probably not, you know. So it depends on how much you use the knife, right? There are infinite variables, right? You can't take anything as absolute fact. I'm just doing my best to give you guys my experience and give you, you know, basically the information I've read coupled with my own experience there. So anyways, the coating on this is not hard coat anodization. This is essentially paint. Hard coat anodization, or type 3 hard coat anodization on a Microtech knife is way more durable. It'll still scratch, but it's way more durable than whatever this is. This is going to rub away and wear off on areas where there's a lot of friction. You're constantly messing with it, right? The seams, like where everything is supposed to meet up, it's got some lips and some edges, and it really feels like, you know, kind of some sloppy manufacturing and things just being held together with screws, which is exactly what it is. Firing in and out, this thing is definitely going to rub immediately. You're going to get rub marks on the side of the blade, right? And that's because it's kind of floppy, right? I mean, these OTF knives in general do not have the same, they don't lock out solid like folding knives do, or premium or really nice folding knives, right? Or even not necessarily that. Budget folding knives will lock out hard. This is not a deadlock OTF. The deadlock OTF and I think maybe one other are famous for having zero blade play, but the knife that I'm using as an example there is a $1,500 custom. This is a $600 semi-custom, and it has a little teeny tiny bit. But you can see that there are no rub marks. People who have been following my channel for a long time know exactly how long I've had that and how often I play with it and fire it, and right, there are no rub marks on that thing, and that's because generally speaking, I understand again there's going to be some anomalies and things like that. Generally speaking, these things are lined up so perfectly. They're designed to not have any drag or friction on the way out. So coupled with that substantial additional firing power, you're just not going to have a situation where this is going to be failing often, right? I mean, again, if there's excess debris and there's something caught or something wrong with it, then maybe. But for the most part, no, these things are always going to fire reliably and they're going to lock out super, super hard, right? Again, a lot of this stuff is, going to be more or less appealing to some people. On top of that, the blade is basic 440C. I've heard 440C is good stuff. It used to be one of the best steels around in the 80s, but it's not the 80s anymore. This is an ingot form steel. What the Microtech here is using, and other steels even, other knives even, again, I wish I had like the Guardian Tactical Recon or Ultratech here to compare, because this is way more expensive, right? Not going to pretend, not going to try and justify $600 over $40, but the argument's mainly being made for OTF knives in the $250 to $300 range that are US made, right? Same level of quality as this guy, just not hand ground or anything like that. But they're using materials or blade steels like LMAX, 204P, M390, right? S35VN. Those are premium steels. Those are powder formed, which means the composition, right? The composition was very, very specific. Not that it's not in 440C. Very specific composition meant to yield very specific results in the usage scenarios that these were designed for. They're going to have better edge retention. They may not, it depends on, obviously depends on the heat treat between the two, right, and the geometry of the blade, but in some cases the blade steel may be more or less tough. They're definitely going to be harder to sharpen, right, but edge retention, which is a big factor, right, is 100% going to be better. A lot of people who I think don't understand that will say things like, my lightning is just as sharp as a Microtech. Sharpness is not edge retention. You can sharpen anything. You could sharpen a piece of wood and make it not the same level, but yeah, it's how long it stays sharp, how stable that edge is in the environment it was meant to be used in, right? And these more premium compositions, right, they're going to yield better results. Does everybody need that same level of edge retention? No. Does everybody need that exact same level of performance? No. In fact, most people don't, right? So it's okay if you don't see value in those things, but pretending like it's overhyped or it doesn't exist just because you decided not to buy this guy and go with this guy, right? Which is often the case of the people making the argument. Again, not trying to come down on anybody. No, actually there is a major benefit in some situations to going with a much more premium steel. Absolutely, as is the case with most things, right? You get what you pay for. The edge geometry on this thing is usually going to be wonky. Sometimes you'll get a surprise recurve, right? A lot of times the cutting bevel is not going to be equal on both sides. Sometimes you'll actually get a Lightning OTF that doesn't have much of a tip, right? The swedge oftentimes can be uneven or wonky. This guy's okay, right? It's just the product of the blade being basically made in what it needs to be, right, at the bare minimum for simple tasks, and nothing else, being a factor, right? That wonky geometry and the wonky positioning of everything when it's put together is likely the reason why the blade is rubbing and why there's excess friction on this guy, and ultimately it leads to, these things failing more often. And again, the lock, what's actually locking the blade out in this guy is factually nowhere near as durable as what locks this guy out, how the mechanism actually plays a role in locking the blade out, right? So yeah, this is $40, but it has a lot of faults versus the one that is more expensive, right? But truthfully, yeah, these things are going to be plenty dependable for people just looking for a simple OTF, people looking for the ease of manipulation and basically the simple utility of a knife that comes in and out with one hand. It's going to do the job. If you find yourself getting your knife out 2 to 3 times a day for simple things like cutting open cardboard boxes, right? Then you put it away. this knife is probably going to be just fine for you, right? There's probably not much of a reason to spend more money. The Microtech. One of the faults with this guy is, it's not the case with all Microtech knives, but if we're talking about just the Combat Troodon or the Ultratech, right, is that we're looking at tri-wing screws. These are proprietary. You have to either purchase a tool, a special tool to get these out, or you have to send it back to Microtech. But because the Guardian Tactical Recon exists, I can use it as an example. That uses Torx head screws, which you can easily, remove yourself without having to buy some expensive tool, and you can get in there if you want to remove some debris. Firing switch, in my opinion, is a little bit more comfortable. It does take a little bit more effort to fire the Combat Troodon than something like the Lightning, and in this case, we're talking about any of the higher expensive OTFs that I've been talking about. The Recon, the Guardian Tactical Recon 35 especially, actually has a substantially easier firing switch than either of these, and the Ultratech is also very easy to fire. Something to point out, though, is that the actual firing of it, this feels infinitely more premium than this. This actually has a... I don't know if you can hear it. It's actually got a little bit of a ring. Can you hear it? Let's try on this side. It's got a little bit of a thwang, right? And that's parts in there, number one, there's none of the sound deadening goop that they use on these guys, but the tolerances, again, the way that it's put together, things are just going to ring, right? So while it's still deploying, it's doing what it needs to do, right? There's anybody handling, these side by side. If 10,000 people picked these up and fired them back to back, I'm going to guess every last one of those 10,000 people is going to go, yeah, unquestionably the Microtech feels way higher quality. It's night and day, right? You don't have to spend $600 on a knife, a Microtech, to get that type. You can feel that same level of quality in an Ultratech. It fires harder, it fires smoother, and it doesn't make that twangy, rattly noise, right? This guy, very rattly and shaky. This guy, almost nothing, right? It's true, right? It doesn't necessarily mean something to everybody. It's just true. The blade is very, very well done. I understand this is a hand-ground blade, but you'll actually be able to pick this up on a much less expensive Ultratech. It's just taking a quick look at the blade, you'll find that everything is, for the most part, it's just about perfect, right? Every last little bit of this, the edges, right, the chamfering that's going on, here to just knock down some of these little areas, it's all present on this knife. The knife, the Microtech lines and the fit and finish, everything will always meet up exactly right. Everything looks premium. You're not going to get weird, ugly little blemishes or weird little imperfections right out of the gate. This thing is basically the quality control in a Microtech knife is always going to be substantially better, or in any higher end US OTF for the most part, that you're going to pay more money for, is just going to be head and shoulders above the Lightning in terms of fit and finish, right? Does that mean that it's going to last long? Is that the only reason that it lasts longer? Well, no, it's a combination of a lot of things, right? The internals are that way too. It's like I was saying, the internals guide this thing straight out of the end every single time, so there's less friction. The spring has definitely got a lot more power. Even in a smaller Microtech, it's got a lot more power, so it's just going to fire reliably. All of those little teeny tiny elements, right, that by themselves might not seem like that big of a deal, but all of them working together, right? The company who's making the knife, paying attention to all of those little teeny tiny things, the end result of that is not only a better feeling, action, a more quality experience, but it also will inevitably translate on average to a substantially longer lifespan for the more expensive OTF, right? Even if you're just using these knives for simple tasks, these more expensive versions will definitely last longer and have a real warranty, which is not the case with this guy. Eventually, this thing is going to go kaput and you're going to have to buy another one, right? Despite all the people right down there telling you that they've had theirs for 20 years, which it hasn't been available that long. All those people saying that they've had them forever and that they're still fine, and you definitely know it, right? I mean, I hate stating anything as absolute fact, but in my experience and from everything that I've read over the last decade, right, after handling tons and tons and tons of these, right, and having usage experience with both, yeah, this is going to fail out and become inoperable way earlier. I'm talking about possibly decades earlier than this guy. These guys are Microtech knives are made to last a long time. And if they fail out due to imperfections from the manufacturing level, then you have a fully intact warranty to take care of you, right? So that's definitely a thing. Pocket clip, way more secure on this guy. You can see how it's fixed into the butt of the handle, whereas this guy's got a couple of screws that they'll be there for however long they're going to be there, but when they fall out, right, again, I mean, it's like you got to find a screw that fits perfectly, right, or find another pocket clip that works. Microtech, they'll take care of you on the pocket clip if you manage to bend this out or break it, but losing the pocket clip on most Microtech knives, probably not going to happen because of how they're fixed into the butt of the blade, right? So, you know, to recap, it's basically a situation here where what you're spending a lot more money on with a Microtech knife, whether you're looking at a $250 Microtech or you're looking at a $1,000 Microtech, you are buying a much higher level of quality, a much more dependable level of quality. You're buying much more premium materials. In the case of the blade steel, you're buying a blade steel that is going to be, for some people, much more suited for long-term cutting, right? That also couples with, again, we're assuming that these people know how to sharpen, because this guy's going to be way easier to sharpen than this guy. But if you're well versed in the art of sharpening, then 204P even isn't going to be that big of a deal considering what you get back out of it, right? Different scenarios, right? What you use your knives for. The other thing to keep in mind is that Microtech does an excellent job in consistently heat treating whatever steel is, and other companies, not just Microtech. If you pay them a lot more money, well, a lot of what you're paying for again, or some of what you're paying for again, is the consistency and quality of heat treat, which is very, very important when you're talking about steel, right? 440C and 204P, those are just compositions until they're heat treated properly. Properly and consistently heat treated 204P will be head and shoulders over even properly and consistently heat treated 440C. But that's probably not what we're getting here, because this is a $40 knife. It probably has some form of heat treat on it, but the consistency, right, how hard it is and whether or not it's hitting that optimal mark, that's probably completely and totally up in the air, right? So those are the factual differences between, you know, more expensive OTFs and a less expensive OTF like the Lightning. So which one should you buy, right? Again, I'm not going to tell anybody you need to spend $600 on a Signature Series Combat Troodon, but let's pretend this is the Guardian Tactical, Recon 35, or Ultratech, which are two of the most recommendable US or high quality OTF knives in existence, right? Those are, you know, knives that not everybody needs. In fact, most people don't need that in a usage scenario, right? But do those premium tolerances, right? Everything meeting up and creating this, you know, more pleasurable experience and, you know, more dependable experience, right? More performance-oriented experience. Does that cater to some people? It absolutely does. There are definitely people out there who use knives on a daily basis who are looking for the convenience and functionality of an OTF knife, who can definitely benefit from that extra stuff, and it will be well worth the money, absolutely. But there are way less of them out there than there are people who this guy is really made for. I would say at least 80% of the people out there, really all they would really need is something like this, right? The point of this video is not to say which one is better. It's to help people wave off comments like, Microtech knives are overpriced and they're a greedy company and it's basically the same thing as the Lightning. I know it sounds ridiculous to a lot of people who watch my channel and who are, you know, kind of well versed in the knife world, but I can't tell you how often I see stuff like that. If you're seeing or hearing comments like that, you can wave it off as essentially a comment coming from somebody who just isn't in a position where they're ready to spend this type of money on a Microtech knife, or really don't need the excess performance and dependability that comes with this knife, and they opted for this guy and convinced themselves that it's probably just as good. No. It's just not the case. They're both good, but they're both good from different perspectives, right? People with different budgets or different usage habits, right? This is really all the more OTF that most people ever need, but some people legitimately do need something like this. To add another layer on top of that, if you are an enthusiast or somebody that's really interested in all of the fine details of a knife, right? And maybe you just have not really ventured past the $200 mark or even the $100 mark, and you're wondering, is there really going to be that much of a difference? Is going to, as somebody who really approaches knives, you know, with this sense of, I like, you know, combing over them with a magnifying glass and looking at all of the different little, you know, machining elements and appreciating all of these tolerances, things fitting together, right? After I spend that $260, $270 on a really nice OTF, is it going to bring me that much more joy than what I get from the Lightning? I'm going to say definitely yes. There is a ridiculously noticeable difference between these two tiers of knife, right? And a lot of people who have gone ahead and taken that step will tell you exactly the same thing. Not everybody, because sometimes, you know, people get a new really expensive knife and something goes wrong. And then they, you know, based on that one experience, they wave off the entire company, which is that doesn't make any sense, right? But yeah, both of these knives, you know, both Microtech knives and the Lightning OTF, and maybe some of there's not a lot of other budget OTFs that I'd really recommend over the Lightning. They're both recommendable, right? If you have the budget for the more expensive one, right, if you can financially justify it and your usage habits call for this level of quality and these types of materials, or you're an enthusiast who really appreciates those extra elements, then this is money. These types of knives are money well spent. If you are none of the above, go for this guy and you'll be just as happy. I know people really hate it when I conclude things that way, right? You want to know what my opinion is, which one I'm going to go for? 100% of the time, I'm going to go with a Microtech. I've handled too many knives from too many different tiers, right? I can appreciate the Lightning OTF for what it is, and I think it's still a recommendable knife for most people in today's knife world, but I'm at the point now where there's nothing left for me to really appreciate about the Lightning, even if I do need a simple beater to just throw around, right? There's just nothing. My heart doesn't beat for the Lightning anymore, right? My blood pumps for these higher end OTF knives, and I just really love and appreciate the excess that goes into them. And most of the time, I am ready and willing to pay the extra money, right? Not quite at the level where I'm ready to fork over $1,000 for a custom, you know, Marfion custom OTF, right? Or more than that. They definitely get substantially more than that, but that doesn't mean I don't understand where the value comes from. I'm hoping that some people got a better clarification on exactly what goes into these two. I mean, this video is not, you know, it's not unlike a lot of other videos that I've done where I talk about the difference between expensive folding knives and inexpensive folding knives, right? It would be silly to pretend that these two are exactly the same. The Microtech SOCOM Elite and the Ontario Rat, both of them are knives and both of them cut, but they're made out of different materials. They're made in different countries, right? And they're made in substantially different ways with a lot more processes going into the Microtech SOCOM Elite. That's actually an example I probably should have made much earlier on in this video, right? Don't let people tell you that there's no reason for anybody to spend more than a certain amount of money on a knife, right? It may not be the right choice for you or even the right choice for them, but there are definitely reasons to spend a little bit more on a knife. How much, that's entirely up to you, right? Like I said, I've got lots and lots of videos offering additional clarification on topics like this, and about 1,300 videos in total with comprehensive reviews of knives ranging from $20 all the way up to about $3,000. So I'd invite you to check some of that stuff out and get some of that information for yourself if you want to. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. I don't know that there's really a whole lot more that I need to talk about. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.